I'd like to begin by thanking the St. Andrew's congregation for the invitation to my wife and myself to be with you here today and to share with you and take part in these Advent meditations. Reverend Ferris has already helpfully explained some of the background of the Kairos Palestine Document and its significance, and that's very helpful. Our trip to Palestine was made in response to the invitation of that document to come and see for ourselves what it's like today to live as a Palestinian in Palestine and to live as a Christian in the Middle East. Our visit took place in October from the 4th to the 20th and was facilitated by our main partner in the Middle East, the Middle East Council of Churches. During our visit to Israel-Palestine, we spent 2 nights in Jerusalem and 3 in Nazareth. Our main base of operations, however, was the city of Bethlehem, where we spent a total of 7 nights. Our accommodations in Bethlehem were at a Roman Catholic retreat center operated by the Franciscan Order. The Casa Nova Hotel, as it is called, has an absolutely incredible location, literally located right beside the Church of the Nativity, one of the 2 or 3 of the most sacred sites in the Holy Land. An Orthodox church built right over the spot where Jesus Christ is believed to have been born. To reach the actual spot where Christ is believed to have been born, you must descend stairs that go down into what was once a very shallow cave. The exact spot where Jesus was born is marked by a metal star embedded into the stone floor. The star, of course, is meant to recall the star that shone on that site on the night of the very first Christmas. The star that the wise men from the east believed foretold the birth of a king. The wise men who followed that star to Bethlehem were the first Gentile pilgrims to journey to what we now call the Holy Land to worship Jesus Christ. Since that time, millions of others, including the 8 of us who were part of the Moderator's trip delegation, have made that same journey to worship Christ at that same spot. Then as now, the star that marks that spot, whether in the sky or set into the rock as it is today, represented and continues to represent hope. Hope for a better world. Hope for a world where there is justice for all. Hope for a world where there is peace on earth. Hope for a world where God's will be done on earth, even as it is already done in heaven. Unfortunately, there are fewer pilgrims going to Bethlehem these days than there once were. And of those who do go to Bethlehem as pilgrims, fewer than before stay in Bethlehem overnight. Most of those who do make the pilgrimage to Bethlehem today arrive in large tour buses, which whisk them in and out of Bethlehem and into the perceived relative safety of Jerusalem within only a few hours. The economy of Bethlehem has long been dependent on providing accommodation and meals, and providing services and souvenirs for pilgrims. Fewer pilgrims staying in Bethlehem means less business and less income for those who live there, and most especially for the Christian community in Bethlehem, which has been diminishing for several decades now, and whose very survival is threatened if things continue as they are. Bethlehem, you see, is surrounded by a wall of concrete some 8 meters high. Soldiers man checkpoints on the few roads through which pilgrims and citizens of Bethlehem leave and enter the city. Bethlehem is a city in the Palestinian territory, a city. And since the Israeli government considers every Palestinian to be a potential terrorist or terror suspect, every Palestinian who wants to pass through that checkpoint, whether it's to work, to visit relatives or friends outside, or even just to get a change of scenery, must apply for a permit or pass from the Israeli authorities. Those permits are hard to get, and very few people who live in Bethlehem have approval for such passes. Most of the inhabitants of Bethlehem, therefore, are effectively trapped in their city, which has become for them very much like a very large prison. A prison in which there is very little work for them and very few opportunities for advancement. One sure way for them to get an exit pass, however, is to make the decision to leave Bethlehem for good, to emigrate. Many have done that, and each one who goes leaves behind a much diminished community, especially for the Christian community. Christian leaders in Bethlehem told us that they are very fearful that if present trends continue and things do not change, the day will come when Christian holy sites, like the Church of the Nativity, will no longer be centers of worship for a living local Christian community. Rather, they will become stone monuments, museums, if you like, representing dead stones, because the living stones, the Christians of Bethlehem, the Christians of Palestine who lived and worshipped there since the days of Jesus Christ, will no longer be living there to give them life. Now, what is true of the city of Bethlehem is also true in many ways of the whole of the Palestinian territories. One of the most helpful days we had in terms of understanding what is presently going on in the Palestinian territories was spent with the director of the Committee for Refugee Works of the Near East Council of Churches. The day was spent tracing the route of the separation wall, as it's called, and the network of Israeli settlements and the access roads linking them that are gradually swallowing up Palestinian land in the West Bank. The government of Israel justifies this wall, the rapidly expanding settlements that are illegal under international law, and the more than 700 checkpoints, and everything else it does to confine and to make life difficult for Palestinians in the West Bank in the name of security. These days, almost anything can be justified in the name of security. The official border between the West Bank and Israel is some 315 kilometers long. Yet only 51 kilometers of the wall, which is supposed to be built for security purposes, is actually built along the official border. Winding in and out of Palestinian territory for some 774 kilometers, more than twice the length of the official border, so as to include as many as possible of more than 200 illegal settlements, with their 620,000 Jewish settlers or colonists in the West Bank, and enclosing some 13 of the major aquifers, which are the major water sources for people in the West Bank. The wall is being created, and the wall has been designed to create what the Israeli government calls facts on the ground. Facts on the ground that will change the demographic balance in Palestine, Israel, considerably. It was readily evident to us as we went along its length and observed the settlements that if left to stand, the wall will eventually make it virtually impossible to create or establish a separate, viable Palestinian state. A Palestinian state with its remaining territory enclosed within a single contiguous border. Now, what do I mean? If you look at a map of Palestine today as it's been sliced and diced, in the words of Ariel Sharon, by Israeli settlements and roads, you can think of a Palestinian enclave here that's like a small island of Palestinians, another one here, another one there, 20 or 30 of them, all separated, and the land between them claimed and occupied by Israel, and the roads linking them, Israeli roads, on which Palestinians, for the most part, are not allowed to travel. How can you have a country that looks like an archipelago, and it's not on water, but based on land? The wall and the settlements and this network of security roads has created an impossible and intolerable situation, not only for the Palestinians, but also, although they live in denial about its consequences, for the Israelis, who, unless they tear down that wall and dismantle the settlements, will inevitably find that they are forced to choose between what are for them two very difficult decisions, unpalatable decisions. They will have to decide between annexing the West Bank and incorporating the Palestinians who live there into the state of Israel as full citizens, and then eventually ceasing to be what they want to be, a Jewish state, or attempting to govern the Palestinians as a subjugated and second-class people forever, and so finding themselves forced to forego their liberal democracy as they glory in, and increasingly take on the apparatus of a police state as the only way of keeping the Palestinian underclass in its place. Throughout our visit, the emphasis was placed on meeting and interacting with local Palestinians. Our delegation listened to their stories. We saw with our own eyes the humiliations and indignities that they undergo daily at the checkpoints. We heard of their hopes and their dreams for a land of their own and for justice. Throughout the visit especially, we heard the fervent desire of the Palestinians for a state of their own, a country of their own where they would be able to live in peace with all their neighbors, including their neighbor Israel, and where their children would have a future. During our visit, many people graciously shared their lives and their hopes with us. They expressed their belief that it is important for them that people in the rest of the world, and most particularly in the global north and in the global west in particular, should know what is going on, what is happening in Palestine at this present time. All that they asked of us in exchange for their time and their hospitality was that when we returned to Canada, we should tell other Canadians the truth of what we had seen and experienced of Palestinians and of life in Palestine today. They want the world to know that they are not terrorists as they are portrayed. They are a people, contrary to what a Republican candidate said over the weekend who denied that the Palestinians are a people. They are in fact a people who want to live in peace with their neighbors and a land of their own. The members of the delegation who traveled in the Palestinian territories and in Israel have come to believe that in the name of providing security for Israel, a terrible injustice is taking place in Palestine and against the Palestinian people. Current Canadian government policy is complicit in perpetuating this injustice. Blatantly one-sided political policies that privilege the legitimate needs for security of one people, the Israelis, over against the equally legitimate needs of another people, the Palestinians, for a land of their own, serve only to increase conflict in the region and to make peace impossible. If we in Canada do not alter our policies and take a more constructive, a more even-handed approach to the region and its problems, we will inevitably find ourselves on the wrong side of history. I say this because although a great injustice can go on in our world for a long time, no injustice ever goes on forever. Just as surely as the Berlin Wall came down, just as surely as minority white rule in Rhodesia collapsed, and as apartheid in South Africa gave way to majority rule, so also the separation wall, the wall that separates Israel and Palestine, will also one day come down. And on the day that that wall does come down, on that day finally, the long-suffering people of Palestine, just like the Jews in Israel today, will finally have a land that they can call their own, a land in which they can live in peace and with justice. Thank you.